We just got it working now.
All right, well, good evening. I'd like to call to order the regularly scheduled Town of Haymarket Planning Commission meeting for Wednesday, June 7th, 2017. Roll call, please.
Mr. Carroll?
Here.
Mr. Lee?
Here.
Ms. Pasanella?
Here.
Mr. Carroll?
Here.
Mrs. Carroll?
Here.
Mr. Shannon?
Here.
Mr. Pompey?
Here.
All right, if we could all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for a moment of silence, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, a moment of silence, please. All right, thank you. You may be seated. All right, the first order of business is the minutes approval from our May 10th meeting, so if you all could quickly look at that. All right, does anybody have a motion to approve the minutes from May 10, 2017?
I move to accept the minutes from May 10th.
Okay, do we have a second?
I second.
All right, thank you. Any discussion? All right, seeing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right.
Abstention.
We have one abstention. All right, before we go to citizens' time, I just want to make a few comments before we get started. Excuse me. I just want to remind folks here and people listening that in communication with the town, there's several ways that we communicate. And the primary way we communicate is the Town of Haymarket.org website. And if you go to the Town of Haymarket website and you click on meetings, you can pull up the agenda before the meeting. It's publicly loaded in before the meeting occurs. You can look at the agenda. You can look at everything that's going to be discussed. You can go back. You can click on video. You can watch the previous meetings. You can watch this video live, or you can go home tonight for late night enjoyment. Since the Nats played earlier, you can go home and watch it. So I think that, well, I don't think, the process is extremely transparent. Anything you want to know is on that website. You can also click on getting text alerts for any type of public hearing. So there are multiple ways to be informed. So I just want to put that out because there's been some concern that things aren't always transparent. But if you go on the website, it's all there, even the agenda that we're going to cover tonight. So with that said, we're going to move into citizens' time. Just a couple quick reminders as we get into citizens' time. Each person is allowed 5 minutes. The whole idea of citizens' time is for the citizens to come and talk about whatever they want. We're not going to get in a dialogue. It's your time to say what's on your heart you want to share with the town. So if you ask a question, we're not going to deliberate. The next thing, please be respectful. I was watching some of the video today, and it caught my attention. Some of the words that we have up on the wall, we do our best to adhere to them. And so we'd ask you to be respectful, but we do want to hear from you. I mean, that's what public government's all about, is hearing from the constituents. So with that said, when you speak, if you would come up and give us your name and your address and talk to us, not the audience, we'd appreciate it. And if you go over by 30 seconds, there's no trap door that's going to open. But please be succinct in your comments, all right? So with that said, we will open up citizens' time.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I just want to make sure we make the note. If anyone is here to speak on our agenda item 6, public hearings, to wait until that public hearing for that agenda item instead of speaking at citizens' time.
Correct. Yes, that's the public hearing. Thank you, Commissioner. The public hearing is on the SUP for the renewal of the modular classroom. So at this point, it's anything that's not on the agenda. But if you can't stay, you have somewhere to go, and you want to make a comment, you can feel free to do so. All right? So public citizens' time is open. You just come up here.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Kathy Shalvey, 6748 Blythe Drive, and I did speak the other night, and I'm going to speak tonight about one of the same issues I spoke about the other night, and that is my concerns with my husband with the QBE Business Park site plan. I went through, and it's primarily the ingress-egress on Blythe Drive, and we went through my whole list the other evening, and you were all present, so I'm not going to go through the list of how I think that egress-ingress will impact Blythe Drive and the residents in the back neighborhoods. We have that. I wanted to talk a little bit more about our concerns and how we would like to, and I'm not asking a question of you, I'm just talking, is I think maybe we would have liked to know more about, prior to this, what the benefits are to this ingress-egress on Blythe Drive versus really examining the possibility of having the only ingress and egress on Washington Street, or perhaps 2 on Washington Street, versus the Blythe Drive. I'd like to maybe at some point, or maybe we can go through the plans, I'm not sure, but understand why this Blythe Drive outweighs the impact it'll have on the neighborhood, be it the list that I went through and the potential gridlock and all of that. And I understand there are new developments, and correct me if I'm wrong, well, don't correct me if I'm wrong, but I understand that the John Marshall Commons project is no longer a factor. I think the other night at the meeting, that project is no longer in effect. So therefore, the roundabout that was being discussed that was right near the entrance, the two-way entrance for Washington Street, is not going to be a factor on that traffic. So I think that is a development that impacts potentially the reasoning for having the second ingress-egress on Blight Drive. Also, I believe Alexander's going to speak about it, but we were made aware that the VDOT did not actually do the ID traffic test. They approved the site plan with the Blight Drive egress in it. So therefore, the site plan already had the Blight Drive egress in it when it was presented to the VDOT. It wasn't the VDOT, as I understood it, that drove having to put the Blight Drive egress in. Another concern, and if, you know, I just want to also say that I think this is a great project, bottom line. I think it's a wonderful addition to the community. I said it the other night, I think the building design is nice, and I think that what the developer is trying to do with the site is a benefit to the community. I'm just having some concerns with the Blight Drive egress for the reasons I stated. But I do think that if this goes through as planned, that the pedestrian aspect should probably really be addressed right away, because we're trying to create a new business development at that end of town, and it's an asset to the town, but there's no walkway between the church and Blight Drive, or is there a crosswalk from the existing sidewalk across the way? And getting back to my issue about safety with pedestrians and how we're trying to promote a pedestrian community, I think that those two things, the sidewalk, the pedestrian, the bicycle access, should be a priority before allowing the groundbreaking, or at least the traffic that's going to be accumulated from the Blight Drive ingress-egress, should it go through. You know, and I just think the benefits of the town of that would be in harmony with the planned pedestrian community.
Ma'am, that's 4 minutes. You have 1 minute, please.
Okay, thank you. That's really it. I mean, I also want to mention, too, that we're fairly new to town, but we're not here to just complain about the traffic. I know there's traffic in town. We didn't come here to complain about traffic. Actually, I work in Haymarket, and I've been working here for several years. I do a lot for the community. I write a blog that promotes Haymarket and the events in Haymarket. You know, as a tax-paying citizen, myself and about 50 or so other residents down the road, I think really it would be nice if there was a way that there could be a way to revisit that Blight Drive ingress and egress so that our concerns are put into effect. And if that's the case, then maybe the 1 or 2 exits from Washington Street could be explored more. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for coming. I really appreciate it.
Hi, Tim Shelby, her husband. And again, I spoke a few months back, and Sean and I have known each other for over 20 years. And he's doing a really nice job with the building design. Again, we don't have any concerns about that. We love the development. But again, Blight Drive, right? So it's 50-plus houses. You know, probably every house does 4 trips a day up and down there, going to work, going out shopping, whatever. There's already a couple of hundred trips a day on Blight Drive. And we're on the corner, so we see the cars back up at peak times. And so we're going to add over 450 more trips per the plan to those 200 trips today. So we're going to go 300%. And I think that really needs to be taken into consideration. The ingress-egress is a 2-lane off Route 55 today. Perhaps that could be looked at to make a 3rd lane where you've got a right turn only coming out. And so people aren't waiting for cars to make a left. Instead, they can easily make a right, get on their way, and maybe push a little more traffic out onto 55 directly instead of coming out on the Blight Drive. If the determination is that you need to have that egress-ingress, maybe push it back to the back lot and come out where the road is. I forget the name of that road in the back. But, you know, when you're coming right out of that entrance that's proposed, headlights are going to be hitting a house dead on when they come out and turn. 2 or 3 houses there are just going to get inundated with light. Because there's going to be a restaurant there, there's going to be night business there. And if that, if it is required, and again, we'll leave that to the planners, but if it is required after a study's done, then that egress should be pushed back to line up with the road that's in the back of Blight Drive. And people coming in and out of that facility will most likely head back up towards the 55 entrance and wait to get out versus driving to the back of the facility and driving traffic out in the Blight. So today, by the plan, there's over, I think it's around 750 cars coming in and out on a daily basis out of the main entrance. And on the Blight, they're targeting about 450. So anything we can do to drive more traffic out towards Route 55 would be in the interest of our community. And again, you're talking about 3 times as much traffic on a residential road. There's nowhere to park there, so it's a kind of a narrow road already. So you're going to have some major issues with trucks going up and down there to pick up trash collection, emergency vehicles potentially. Anything we can do to drive traffic to Route 55 is appreciated. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Alexander Bayena, 6817 Walnut Park Lane, Haymarket, Virginia. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to come before you today. And I'm not going to repeat the same things that I said on Monday. And basically, all I ask you to do is to put yourself in our shoes, okay? Again, like they stated, we don't have any issue with the development per se. It's the impact to our community as far as access to 55 from our community. I've looked at the plan, like they stated. It looks like there is some sort of a vehicles per day numbers on each ingress and egress. And it looks like there are 491, expected 491 vehicles per day on the Blight Drive ingress and egress. Okay, that's quite a bit of cars there. Okay, so take that into consideration. It just doesn't make sense to me to put that many cars on a residential street that is already utilized by our community. In addition to that, there are expected 735 additional cars utilizing the Route 55. So that's a total of about 1,226 vehicles per day coming and going out of the property. And I think I sent you an email with an attachment, a memo from a professional engineer from VDOT. He says, the first line, generally for the development of this size, local jurisdiction, town of Haymarket, has the responsibility of assessing the need for traffic impact analysis. So, my question is, why is it that the town didn't think it was necessary to have a traffic analysis performed? What you have in the plan is expected vehicles per day, not an impact analysis. They're totally different. Okay, basically, we're asking that gets done first before you consider this plan any further. Okay. I understand this is a great business opportunity for Mr. Landry and his investors, okay? And there's nothing wrong with that. But at the same time, I don't think it should be at our detriment. Other options should be considered. Okay. I'm not sure if you've also been told that the plan that you have has the Blight Drive ingress and egress because it's a VDOT requirement. I come to find out that's not correct. Okay. I personally believe that what needs to be done could be done by just utilizing Route 55. The required changes can be made. I understand it's going to cost more. It's going to take longer. Okay. But again, it should not be at the detrimental impact to my community and to us, to the residents of this town. So again, I please ask you to put yourself in our shoes when making this decision today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, before I forget, I would like to also submit the petition again.
Okay, you can.
44 signatures versus 43. Thank you.
All right, anyone else? Citizens' time.
Dottie Leonard, 14801 Washington Street. I wanted to thank you all for moving the approval through at your public hearing the other night. I was extremely grateful, but after you all left the meeting, there seemed to be some confusion between some of the council members and staff, so I'm still hanging in limbo. Further away. I also want to time myself too. Anyway, it was confusing to me because, to back up a little bit, when the planning commission, when the council approved the comprehensive plan change 15 or 16 months ago to allow those 3 properties, not 4, but 3 properties. The first 2 have been commercial for years. The next 3 were planned commercial for 20 years at least. And what you all did was restore the down planning to them, or the council restored the down planning to them at that January 2000. Sorry, I don't know how to.
I don't know if it's your cell phone.
Yes, ma'am, you may want to
move your cell phone.
There you
That may
go.
help.
Okay. So when you gave the plan language back to them, it was for them to be, I understood it to be, and I bowed out my issue with the sign not appropriately showing me because I didn't want it to be stopped. I wanted it to go through for them to be planned commercial. I know their signs say commercial. They're not commercial. They're only planned commercial. And it makes perfect sense to me that you would want to see what they're going to do, that the council would want to see, that the public would want to see what they're going to do before it gets approved. What I don't understand is what I brought up at my last meeting here with you all, that the map still shows me as residential, and it was commercial when I bought it 17 years ago. I saw several maps the other night, 3 different maps showing me 3 different ways. I'm having a hard time with this. I know you all aren't doing it. I know the council isn't doing it. The staff you trust. And you've had lots of changes in the staff, and I'm not blaming your current planner because he's been awesome as far as I'm concerned. But somebody isn't making sense around here. So after the meeting the other night, after you all left, the council, several people on the council were raising the issue that they didn't want people's taxes to be raised. Their taxes aren't going to be raised until after they sell it. Their taxes aren't raised until the values go up when somebody pays more for it. That didn't make any sense. Then somebody else said, raised another issue. But the situation is this. I am still sitting down there. I don't understand why people keep bringing up the issue of transition for 3 measly houses. The first 2 have been commercial more than 25 years. It's 3 measly houses. Are they transitioning to me? And I'm already commercial on the other side of them. It should just be what you all said you were going to do, and you did do it, and you put it through that way. I am grateful. I'm extremely grateful. I don't understand the confusion between staff and council. If I'm already zoned, why am I still looking residential on the map? And why do they keep putting that map off way in the future? I want to get it done. I'm just
Linda, you have
asking your
30
help in
seconds, please,
clarifying.
ma'am.
Pardon me?
30 seconds, please.
I'm done, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Appreciate it.
Anyone else for citizens' time? All right, seeing none, we will close citizens' time. Next up, we're looking at a public hearing, special use permit, SUP number 2015-001, renewal, modular classroom, St. Michael's Academy, 6735 Fayette Street.
Good evening. David Monroe, 7185 Homestead Court, Warrenton. I serve as school administrator and chaplain to St. Michael's Academy. We are in the process of renovating 42,000 square feet in Vent Hill to combine our two campuses. Right now, we're split. Our pre-K campus is the one on Fayette Street, and we have a kindergarten through fifth grade in the QBE building. And so for years, the board has wanted to combine the two. Unfortunately, there's not enough space for us here in Haymarket because the board also wants to expand in the middle and high school. So we found some property in Vent Hill we think will work for us. However, it's going to take us a while to renovate it. So we would like to leave the pre-K campus on Fayette Street for 18 months probably during the construction. But we're asking for renewal on the SUP for the modular classroom building to stay in place. We've talked with St. Paul's Episcopal Church, the landlord, and they have no problem with us leaving the modular in place while we do our construction. I know the paperwork says 3 years. Talking with Mr. Garrison, we thought that would give us enough time in case anything happens with the construction schedule, which can always happen. But also in talking with Mr. Garrison, we're not sure that the adjacent neighbors were contacted properly. And so we're actually asking you not to take any action tonight, but to wait until your next scheduled meeting in July. And during this time, if you have any suggestions or any questions or concerns, if you would let me know, we will address those so that we can move forward.
All right, thank you. Mr. Garrison, you want to make some comments about this SUP?
I'll be happy to. I'm going to recommend to the Planning Commission tonight that the public hearing be continued until our next meeting, which would be July 5th at 7 o'clock. We can continue to take any public comment this evening, but that the hearing be continued to that point. The reason for doing that is I don't know if we've notified all of the adjoining property or owners according to the state code, and I want to make sure that we absolutely do it correctly. So we would continue the public hearing until that point, and in the meantime, advertise it and notify those property owners.
Okay. All right.
I've got a tentative schedule that I discussed with Pastor Monroe, and a copy of that's in front of you.
Okay. All right, any questions from the commissioners to either the pastor or town planner?
No, my comment is I think it's great that you would take the extra time to notify the neighbors. That's
We want to
laudable.
make sure that everything is done decently and in order, so we want to make sure that everybody is aware.
All right, well, we appreciate it, and we will continue the hearing to July 5th. We'll keep it open. All right, thank you. All right, moving on, ARB and Town Council update. Mr. Leek?
Thank you, Chairman. We had a very packed agenda here at our past meeting. Very long meeting, about 4 hours, but we got a lot accomplished, which felt very good. One item that we listened to was the appeal from Z Properties for the demolition permit that the ARP denied at their regularly scheduled meeting. And this has been tabled to next Friday for action. We had asked for a couple items to be presented to the town council so that we could take action. We also, as we know, Mr. Madhu Panthi got sworn back in, and the town council voted unanimously to reappoint Mr. Madhu Panthi. So I want to take this time to thank him for his service to our town, as well as all of us at this dais this evening. We accepted a fiscal 16-17-year budget amendment. We also adopted our hazard mitigation plan. We adopted the fiscal 17-18-year operating budget. We also approved the zoning ordinance that the Planning Commission had forwarded to the Town Council. And at a previous meeting, we appointed our Town Clerk, Ms. Danielle Kieski, to Town Clerk Ms. Alice Jarrell decided that moved back into the private sector. And so we appointed Ms. Danielle, who's been serving us as an administrative role for a long amount of time now and has done an absolutely phenomenal job and mends extremely well with our staff and just puts out a great work ethic. And we are so excited to have her on our team here with the town of Haymarket as our town clerk. And those were all of the updates for the town council. The ARB update, the only update would be that the Z properties got pushed to the next meeting. That. Thanks.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, I had one quick question on the zoning map.
Yes, sir.
I know y'all were going to take that up in another session. When is that going to be?
That is put on our agenda for our next regularly scheduled meeting, which is July. It is not July 3rd. It is July 10th.
Okay. Thank you.
Which is different than our normal. Our normal is the first Monday of every month, but with the 4th being the following day, we chose to push it back to the 10th.
So you approved the zoning text amendment 4-1-1. So that is what we're governing with now. And then the zoning map is what you guys tabled, pushed back to, you said, July 10th, correct?
Yes, sir.
And I know at the meeting the other night, and I concur, it was a long one because I left here at 11:15. I was a little disappointed. I stuck around for questions, didn't get any, but that's okay. But I just want to make it clear, those three properties on Washington Street that's had the two owners of those three properties come in requesting to be Zone B1. And then looking, Ms. Leonard here on the zoning text of the zoning map that we presented to you all, it has her at B1 at the map that we all looked at the other night. And then there was mention that there were 6 properties of people that we were rezoning that didn't want to be rezoned. You all are going to look into that and find out what properties the speaker was referring to, correct?
Yes, sir. We had asked staff to look into that, and they are doing that as we speak.
Because I can tell you, on the Planning Commission over the past year and a half, we've only had 2 landowners, and both of them were here the other night and want to be Zone B1. And I know Mrs. Leonard, every meeting she comes and says the same thing. That's not a criticism to her. It's we need to get the zoning map buttoned up.
I agree, sir, and I think what it really comes down to, and within our fiscal 18-year or 17-18-year budget, we have allocated money aside to be able to update our comp plan, and this is a big part of that comp plan. And with that being said, there is a lot of discrepancies between our planned land use map as well as our zoning map. And I think a lot of times folks get those two maps confused, which is understandable. But within our comp plan, our planned land use map states this is what we see these parcels being in the future. And it is our future 5-year goal from there. Then you have what is your current zoning map. Right. Sometimes they match, sometimes they don't match. Ours, at this point, don't match in some instances, for lack of better terms, to where you have some parcels that are zoned B1, like Miss Leonard's. It's currently zoned B1. But in the planned land use map, it shows R1. Well, common sense would say there's no way that we're going to take that from B1 and downzone it to R1. So why does not the planned land use map show that it is
Correct.
E1? And then you have instances on the flip side, it's where you would have a property such as those parcels that you were speaking to. I refer to them as 4 parcels because one of the parcels is a well parcel. So there's no home on that parcel. It's about yay big.
Right.
But it's technically a well parcel. And those are zoned R1. In the planned use map, it shows TC, which is something that we recommended to the town council last year. And then they acted upon and adopted that. And so that was a comp plan amendment that we had done. So there's sometimes there's confusion between those two maps. And I believe that we really need to dig in to that planned land use map. And I had sent the commission an Excel spreadsheet to where I went through a diagnosis of that planned land use map versus our zoning map with my personal recommendations, which don't mean that they are the correct recommendations, but just recommendations that I would think of. And I think this is something that if we want to act upon immediately, then we need to agree on as a planning commission to get these maps better in line. Or if we speak with staff and we agree, then we can take this up when we amend our comp plan, which will be done this fiscal year, or at least started to start on comp plan, the very large document, as we all know. It needs to be updated mainly every 5 years, but at least we get the ball rolling. So it depends if we want to be doing a comp plan amendment to that planned land use map. In my personal opinion, it's best to make that amendment to that planned land use map, and if folks are wanting to come in and rezone their property, they can come in and do so. But what we do is we're making sure that land use map is what we think the future of the town should be. And then with that being said, if those property owners wish to concur with our agreement of our planning and our knowledge that we've put into that planned land use map, they have the ability to come in and do it.
Right. Yeah, I understand the difference between a planned land use map and a zoning map. I think the frustration for the citizens is some of this has been hanging out there for an extremely long time. And the Planning Commission did make a recommendation, and I understand that we're not the final decision-making on the zoning map. But I would ask that the town council, along with staff, contact these homeowners personally so we can get this done, because something like this shouldn't drag on for 2 years. So that's, if you could go back to the town council and have them fully prepared on the 10th, so it's not August and then September. Any comments on that? Because this has been going on an awfully long time.
I would agree with exactly, Mr. Chairman, what you said. The other night, I was kind of taken back by this was affecting 6 other homeowners or whatever. Where are they? Why would they not be here speaking? And just from my observation, from the cheap seats out here, not that you're cheap seats out there, please, from sitting out here, what I saw was the person who spoke there. That's what cast the doubt. It had me thinking as well. Who did this affect? Why are they not here? So I would agree with what you're saying, and I also agree with Mr. Leek there that we need to get this done. I mean, this needs to move forward. So.
I would add one thing. I know you spoke very well at the beginning of the meeting, Mr. Caudle, about...
We had a lot of feedback.
Here we are.
It's that one the other night was doing the same thing. You may
So
want
town attorney might get next one.
it's an attorney thing.
There is a digital divide. There are people who do not access the internet. They cannot be our only way of communication. It's not appropriate. I know it's the 21st century, but there are many people who are not comfortable with the internet, so we have to reach people. And otherwise, I like your idea of contacting the people, reaching out to town council, but we can't expect people to only count on the internet. The second thing is the planned land use map and the zoning map are confusing. They're confusing to me, at least. We need to better educate people. When Mr. Leek spoke about him a few minutes ago, he spoke very eloquently. He spoke basically of the planned land use map is a future plan, what we would like to see. So perhaps we need to educate the public in our paper works in just such a way. Put those words on it. This is not necessarily what is now, it's our 5-year plan. And in the zoning map, we can equally be good educators and say, this is what is, and then perhaps have information there as to how things can be changed, so that people are basically enfranchised in the system, because that's part of communication, and that's part of basically bringing people in. One of the advantages to a public hearing is that people come in. They're articulate, they're passionate, and they share their ideas. So let's continue to basically foster communication.
I think, too, we said the other evening that this was last done in the early 1990s. We cannot go 20-plus years, 25 years, give or take, before we re-examine the basic things by which we are living in the town of Haymarket. It's crazy. And the way things change, we were speaking today of just being here 7 years. Even it's not 7 years yet, and where Alexander's Keep was not developed, was not finished in the time that when we moved here. So things change so rapidly that we really have to examine these things much more often in the future, maybe to avoid something like Dottie coming here week after week, month after month, and basically, as you pointed out, saying, we've heard you, Dottie, and you shouldn't have to do it, but.
Well, I think that's where the town council over the last 4 years and the other boards, us being one of them, are really trying really hard to put everything in writing so everybody in town operates on the same sheet of music. And I think once we get that voted on by the town council, a yearly review, not even 5 years, would be a good idea to go back and look at that every so often. So all that to say, if you could go back and just anything we can do to help these property owners, because I know the other 2 property owners on Washington Street are highly frustrated. So if you could just pass that along.
I will, and I apologize if I'm overstepping, but I want to make sure I make one thing clear. So we're wanting to go in and change the zoning for these people. Because what ended up happening was there's other parcels and other property owners in the town that had to go through the process. But what the Planning Commission was recommending to the town council was that we went in and we changed those actual properties on the zoning map. Not on the plain land use map,
Correct.
but on the actual zoning map.
What I'm asking you to do is to contact these property owners and tell them exactly what they need to do to get done what they would like to get done. What are the exact steps? Because the Planning Commission recommended to the town council that those properties be one.
To be that the town council changes them
Correct.
to be one.
And I think as an extra step, to go to those landowners and say, here's what's being proposed, it's not official yet, what are your thoughts? And rather than having them come here, I mean, the one gentleman's been here at least 5 times, and they keep getting the same answers. They're like in this loop. We need to clearly communicate what B1 is, what TC is, what the benefits of both are, and educate them so we don't hurt their public property, but at the same time, we have some continuity to the map. I guess my point is we need to get this done.
Understood. Should we put on our next agenda then to do a comp plan amendment to our planned land use map and take a look at those between the 2 maps, what those differences are?
Well, I think the town manager the other night said perfect world, and if I'm misquoting her, that the planned land use map typically precedes the zoning map, but in our case, the zoning map right now needs to be corrected, and then we can tackle the planned land use map.
Understood. My only thing is that it's already on the town council's agenda, so there would be no further action by us unless they kicked it back to us
Right.
to re-review.
Well,
So
it's
my-
out of our hands
Correct,
now.
it's out of our
in their
hands. So
now.
my thing is, let's be proactive. Let's not waste another month, and let's, at the next meeting then, go ahead and start tackling the plain land use map.
Well, we can talk about that another time.
Okay.
We need to get these citizens squared away.
Excellent.
Mr. Lee, is it primarily these 6 people or 6 landowners that are that kept the town council from voting Monday night?
I could not speak on behalf of the town council. What I would like to do would be to recommend any citizen or any commissioner to go watch that video, because each one of the town council members had a different perspective. And I'm pretty sure every single one had a different perspective, and not one matched. And to be honest, I would be misquoting if I spoke on those. Also, those 6 those 6 lots, I am not sure of. I know the town staff is digging in and trying to see where, when the citizen came in and spoke about that, where we're trying to figure out which ones those exactly are so we can communicate with and make sure that everything is in accordance and is in line.
Yeah, because I'm looking at, on the second page, from what we got the other night, the proposed zoning changes, which are down here and in these, if I'm reading this correctly. But, I mean, we can beat this to death. The bottom line is, and we're all of the same opinion, we need to get this done. I think it's important to, in this case, Ms. Leonard, or even the others that have spoken before, to get this fixed.
All right, Mr. Chair, I'm going to go ahead and we'll stop this, but we appreciate you listening. Appreciate all the comments. I just want to get it right for the citizens.
Absolutely.
All right, moving on. Mr. Leak, any other updates, ARB?
No, sir.
All right, thank you. All right, moving on, new business, the SUP, we have continued that to our July 5th. So there's no further action needed on that, correct? Correct. Okay. All right, moving on. Item number 9, old business, site plan review, 14,600 Washington Street, QBE, ZP number 2017-02. I know we have some people here to speak, so
Mr. Chairman, I'll be excusing myself for my disclosure of conflict of interest that I stated at our previous meetings.
All right, thank you, sir. All right, so the order that will speak will be Mr. Landry and then his business partner, if he would like to speak, and then Mr. Geyerson, our town planner, and then we'll enter into discussion. So, Mr. Landry.
Thank you, Chair and Planning Commissioners. We're coming back to you with our final site plan. We've addressed the 3 comments that were brought up on the May 10th meeting. Those 3 topics were traffic, ARB comments, and the possible resolution of the height of the building. As some of you know, the town council has passed the new zoning ordinance that you recommended to them on your June 5th meeting, which resolves our height issue. It was my understanding that the town staff was to provide you the minutes of the February 15th ARB meeting. If you don't have them, I have a courtesy copy here for you as well. That's from the website showing that they were approved ZP 2017-003 as well. I have a couple handouts if I can either approach the dicey or...
If you would like to give them to the town planner, that'd be great. Thank you.
There's 3, yeah. So the third concern, with respect to regard to the traffic concerns. So we reached out to VDOT, our reviewer, to contact Mr. Shannon and address some of the town concerns in the past. Mr. Joshi, our reviewer, sent an email to Mr. Shannon, which I have a courtesy copy that's being distributed as well. In the letter, he stated the following. During our review of the site plan, we asked for the right turn lane warrant A right turn taper, as determined by the warrant, was provided for the site. No additional traffic studies for additional transportation improvements were required or pursued based upon A, potential impact on the local regional network, type and size of the development, traffic operations at the intersections, safety, traffic operational issues, low number of trip generation. Furthermore, to further address the residents' concerns about a potential traffic study, Chairman, with all due respect, the outcome of any traffic study would simply be the number of cars currently traversing Blight. To determine the amount of traffic generated by our new construction, they would use the same ITE estimates that our site plan utilized in our plan, and it would not material impact our site plan. Additionally, per Appendix B of the VDOT road and bridge standards, the geometric design of Blight Drive's 27-foot width, the road can support up to 4,000 vehicle trips per day. Total today, with our new construction proposed, the design is planned for 1,171 trips per day. So we're looking at just over 25% of what that road was designed for today, after our construction. As to why we selected an entrance on Blight Drive, following a code review by our site engineer, it was determined that due to the size and scope of our proposed facilities, we are required to have two means of fire apparatus access. This was done in accordance with Appendix D, Section D 104, Commercial and Industrial Developments, International Fire Code, IFC 2012, which I am providing also as a courtesy copy. For the record, I'd like to read Section D 104, Commercial and Industrial Developments, D 104.1, buildings exceeding 3 stories or 30 feet in height. Buildings or facilities exceeding 30 feet or 3 stories in height shall have at least 2 means of fire apparatus access for each structure. D 104.2, buildings exceeding 62,000 square feet in area. Buildings or facilities having a gross building area of more than 62,000 square feet shall be provided with 2 separate and approved fire access roads. D 104.3, remoteness. Where 2 fire apparatus access roads are required, they shall be placed a distance apart equal to not less than 1/2 the length of the maximum overall diagonal dimension of the lot area to be served, measured in a straight line between the accesses. So that determines where we put them, considering the property, the proffers, everything that we have in consideration. We have no other place to put that other access road. The fire marshal reviewed our plan and concurred with the site plan. Chairman, I'd further like to ask Mr. Shannon for any further comments based on his discussion with VDOT, and afterwards I'd be happy to answer any other questions from the board.
I don't recall the gentleman's name, but I did, in fact, I wrote it down last time, and he's one of the few I don't,
Mr.
probably,
Johnson.
Yeah, I know face, I'm sure, but not name, but I have emails from him that he said the traffic studies were done per VDOT standards, nothing else will be done. If any additional traffic studies need to be done, the town would have to pay for it.
May I ask a question, Mr. Landry?
Sure.
The ITE study, I think that stands for International Traffic Engineers, the acronym,
I believe
correct?
so, yes.
I'm just adding that because I didn't know that, and I
Okay.
looked it up. Was that done for John Marshall Commons? It's a 2013 study or not? What is the date of that study?
I'm sorry, let me defer
If
to
you
my
don't
PE.
mind, sir, if you'll come up to the dais so you
This
can
is
be
John
recorded.
Davis, my PE.
If you could just tell us your name.
John Davis with the KDL Group.
Thank you, sir.
The traffic counts were taken from the ITE, which is the Institute of Transportation Engineers, based on the uses that are proposed. And it's a standard that's used nationwide, and it's used to determine what the potential traffic generation would be for a development.
Is there a date to that, when that study was concluded or carried out?
It's based on the latest ITE manual, which
Did you do it? Did you have some IT expert do it? I mean, I'm just wondering about how that was carried out.
right. It's fairly straightforward. The numbers are taken from the tables and charts that are in the ITE manual based on the proposed use or uses for a site. And then that information, those numbers are collectively put together to determine what the projected traffic generation would be for the site. The only other consideration that we would have had to make would have been the allocation between the two entrances for the total traffic generated by the site.
I think, Ms. Carroll, when was that study done? What year?
Yeah.
Oh, that 2016. Right.
Do we have that study in our packet then? Do we have,
Right. This is a part of and incorporated into the site plan. It's not an independent study as such. In other words, the information that was taken from the ITE manual was utilized to determine what the projected overall traffic generated by the site would be, and that's what's shown on the site plan.
and based on what we listened, no.
Yeah, I think, because I'm looking here at the notes, the minutes from last one, it says the IDE traffic generation study has been conducted.
And that should have been ITE.
It should have been ITE, that's what threw me. And we want to know, when was that study conducted?
If you could just give us your name.
My name is David Hanson.
Thank you.
And Ms. Garrett, I understand. The question you're asking is the development next door to QBE.
Yes.
No, we had nothing to do with their study, nor would we include their information within our site plan. Their site plan, or their proposed rezoning was denied.
Right.
And their study was done long after the site plan for QBE was submitted. The ITE traffic generation that Mr. Davis is speaking of is specifically for QBE. QBE is it's one building, it's one use, or it's multiple uses, but the uses are all combined, and the numbers are fixed. They are, you choose a number for your use and your square footage, and the vehicle trips are based on vehicle trips for similar uses all over the country.
And
They're
then,
aggregated, and then they're just applied to the existing vehicle trips on the two adjacent roadways.
this is it, and I hear lots of praise for the QBE, and I think it's a great idea myself, but the issue of the placement of the driveway, which Mr. Landry was addressing, and the issue of the traffic impact analysis, which is obviously something that we would have to co-pay for, would go a long way to resolving some of the questions addressed by the people on Blight Drive, as well as resolving questions I have about the impact of traffic on Washington Street, which we know is heavily trafficked. And Blight Drive has no other way. The people there are basically, they're very much impacted by this.
Yes, ma'am.
So I would like to see, as I said last meeting, a traffic study, a TIA, traffic impact analysis.
Yes, ma'am. May I address part of your,
Sure.
at least part of it, if I, and I hope I can. Polite Drive is what VDOT would call a fixed generation tertiary roadway. That means there is, and it says it as you come in, there's no outlet. People, there are a fixed number of homes back there. If you were to do a traffic analysis on that, which is why VDOT declined to, is they already know how many vehicle trips come in and out of that street. You can sit there and count them. I understand. There are a certain number of trips that will come out of that street, period. They can calculate, they can come out and count them at the peak hour in the morning, the peak hour in the evening, and give you those numbers. And that is what's on the plan. That's how it's done. It's done a certain number of vehicle trips accounted to each home back there. Single-family detached, I believe it's 10. It's 10 vehicle trips per unit. For the townhouses, it's 7.5, 9. So those vehicle trips are accounted for. And the analysis that you're looking for, that's what it will tell you. It may tell you that a certain number are going left, a certain number are going right, none are going straight because it's not a through intersection, it's a T, so they're either going left or right, entering and leaving.
I think, and I could be wrong here, that one of the issues with the John Marshall Commons, which proposed also a roundabout, was the traffic congestion on 55 would be have an enormous impact on 55. So, and that's not but this is analogous to you.
250 homes, that's 2,500 vehicle trips.
Okay.
Not forced out, but pushed out onto John Marshall.
And you are talking, what did I hear earlier? 1,000?
No.
1,100.
400. That's combined with the current, that is combined with the current usage on Blythe. And
didn't you say 400 and something, 471 plus another 5? Wasn't the total like 1,100?
Yeah, it was nearly 1,200.
But that's the total daily trips.
Right.
That's not speaking to.
Yeah, what Maureen means is just pulling out onto 55.
Yeah.
That's what she's talking about.
Yes, ma'am.
Right.
But that's daily. The way, again, looking at the use of QBE and the use of the residential. In the morning, the residents will be exiting onto 55. The folks coming into QBE will be coming in. So they won't be impacting the exit movement.
Depending on which way they come in, yeah.
Well, yeah.
Hey, Keith Lowry, my address, or just my name. We do it different ways. So what we try to say in the opening statement is, let's say we do a traffic analysis. That road is designed for 4,000 trips a day. The traffic analysis, even if we are grossly wrong on our estimates, which the traffic analysis is going to use exactly the same tables that we use to develop our the number of trips originating at our site, is going to come out and give the same number. Let's say we're wrong. It's double or even 3 times what we said it was. You are still going to be below the number of trips that road is designed for by VDOT. I mean, we can talk about it all the time. That's ultimately what's going to come out. I get the concern from the residents that are on the street, and that does concern me, but we're required to have 2 egresses on our site. We can't put one in the back because we have proffers. We'd have to cut through the field. The only location we can have that second egress is on Blight at that location. As far as the location itself, we rezone that commercial. We have a by right use for an egress onto that site. There's really nothing else that's going to happen to that road. Let's say we do exceed the 4,000 trips. Well, then you're going to start talking eminent domain, coming in and widening the road. You're going to be doing other traffic improvements, which the residents that are on there are going to be much less happy if right turn lanes have to be put in, which is going to take land out of their front yards. But again, 4,000 trips a day is significantly more than what we're talking. And then as far as to get an idea of the traffic, you do have to go back in time and remember that used to be a elementary school. The number of trips that we have coming out of that site are a fraction of what the number of trips coming out of the school were back in 2011, 2012, when it was an active school. When you had over 600 students, you had all the parents coming in and out per day. So from the impact of 55, from its original use, we are significantly
Excuse me.
below that original use. Yes, sir.
As a former teacher, those kids were not driving in, they were busting.
Yeah, and you have buses coming in and out for them all day. You
Exactly,
have all
probably each bus holding about 45 kids. So, you know, if you had 600, you only had about 12 or 14 buses.
and all parents and everything else.
No,
Either
the
way.
parents didn't have to go.
Okay.
I want to just ask a theoretical question. Looking at the wonderful QBE site, which we're applauding, Mr. Landry, and this is part of the democracy. It's messy, but it's best we have. You have a central drive there. Looking at the property, could you have two driveways? That's really a question I think was asked earlier by Mr. Bayard. I'm sorry I don't have your name right. But could you have a driveway in and out within the confines
No.
of your own property? Could that be a loop
No.
around or something? That's not possible, is that what you're saying?
It's not. So the two, yeah, so there's a distance that those two entries, the egresses, have to be. And it's greater than the height of, or the length of the diagonal of the property. And so if you map it out, those two are at the minimum distance apart that they can possibly be. So we could not do another egress out onto 55 and be compliant with the fire.
I mean, if you took away your central one, if you actually moved, you erased your central one and you had one on one end and one on the other, is really
So-
what I'm saying theoretically.
Right, so we can't do for the exit that's at the very end of the into the town, next to the commercial drive on the other side. We
Right.
cannot have an egress there because of the commercial property that's next to it. You cannot have both those at that same location. So that's why that one was originally by the town, we were told to remove that one because, again, you cannot do that, which brought us back to that central location. We can't move that one to the left. If you're looking at the building, because we get into the proffer on the fields, we'd have to remove the fields. Can't move it to the right because the building's in the way in the front of that. So then if you take that diagonal, the furthest that we could get it without violating the proffer is where it is right up next to the proffered space for the fields. And that, again, by the code, it has to be a certain distance from the initial egress in order for fire access to the building, in order for the fire access to the property. Now, again, there was discussion of moving it to the back of the property. Again, we have proffers on that that say we cannot develop that backyard. We would have to remove the ball fields that are in the back that, again, the town required us to put proffers in order to maintain. So we're stuck on that one.
You know, I know, I hear how you're stuck, and I hear the logic of what you're saying, but I also hear from the townspeople a need for a better compromise on the issue. And I would just sort of throw it, because the blight issue is, it's an important issue for anybody who lives there. I would imagine if you said to somebody, would you like to buy one of these wonderful new houses on Blight? We could have 4,000 cars in it, and people would say, I don't think so. I mean, I think that would be a deal breaker.
But that is the code. I mean, that is how VDOT designed that road. And then as far as our property, again, just to go back in time, when we purchased that property, it was zoned residential. And our plan initially was to continue keeping it residential. In order for us to move the boundary line, the town required us to rezone to commercial. Now, as soon as we rezoned to commercial, that then allowed us access to put a commercial egress onto Blight as a by right of the property use. And as far as kind of what we have access to on that property, again, proffers prevent us from doing the field, so we can't put it any further in the back. You can't go straight out the back of the property because those townhouses that are behind us, even though that's a road back there, that is a private drive, so we cannot egress onto the private drive. So that really only gives you the access on Blight where that parking lot is. We can't move the egress any further forward towards 55 because then we're less than the minimum distance required from the two egresses. So really, when you do the design, it doesn't allow you any other location than where that exits out onto Blight. I mean, and that's why we talk about the traffic studies, we talk about everything else. We're going to end up in the same place. And
So a question.
Yes.
I know they did the study for John Marshall Commons, and they came up with the traffic circle. Would it be possible if there was a four-way stop put in from the QBE entrance going out across Green Hill and on both sides of 55 with a crosswalk for people to get back and forth across?
So, I can address the sidewalk. So our plan, in this plan, we're developing the
Yeah,
town
the
walking
sidewalk.
sidewalk
Right.
along 55.
Yeah.
And that will allow us to put a crosswalk across 55. Because today you can't put a crosswalk to basically the opposite side of a street that doesn't have a sidewalk, right? There's no destination per se. So us developing that will allow for a crosswalk
Crosswalk
across
to be put in.
55 and for you to, and you already have a sign there that says, yield for pedestrians.
Yeah, but they don't.
Understand, understand.
That's why I'm thinking of a four-way stop sign because of the
That's a
John Marshall
VDOT
Commons did like 6,500 trips. I just feel for these people that are going to have a hard time getting out, and a four-way stop would let you guys, we're at the stop. Maybe we should pull in, see what's going on in there. I think would make things easier to get in and out of the main entrance, but I don't know what VDOT.
I would think, in conversations with VDOT, they seem to think that they don't want any more stoplights on 55.
They would not. I'm just telling you,
They would-
VDOT on a primary road, 55 is considered a primary.
Right.
Oh, but they should live here and know how hard it is to pull out.
I don't agree. Let me just make a couple of comments. First of all, the pedestrian, that's a major concern.
Yeah, big one.
Everyone. Working for VDOT, I should know this, but I don't. I'm going to research it. Down on Sudley Manor, at their crosswalks, they got a little pedestrian button. You just push it, they start blinking, and it says pedestrian. So I think that's something that needs to be looked at to whether we can do that here or not within the town limits, because I'm not sure of that. I am, because of where I live and because of the other commercial establishment that's going in here on Fayette, y'all know my concern. I was concerned with traffic too and everything. That traffic is nothing compared to what it's going to be on Blythe. But with the plan as it is, there is, I don't see, and I'm, that's why the other engineers make the big bucks. I don't see any other option than what they've proposed. I don't like the idea that Blythe's going to be used by the QBE, but there's no other option with the current plan. I'll leave it at that, with the current plan.
So the town really has nothing that they can do to help the traffic.
By state code, no.
That's a little
Unless, again, the town, if they were willing, the town would have to pay for any additional traffic studies, and then you get the legal bees involved as to, how it would impact.
So they couldn't use the one from John Marshall Commons, the data that was just,
No, because, it was, and that's a lot more cars too, suppose, that was coming out of there.
so if the town did the traffic study, and would we be able to convince VDOT to put in a four-way stop or,
A four-way stop, I can tell you, on a primary, on 55, it's not going to happen.
Traffic light?
Traffic light, depending, chances are it wouldn't, again, because of the amount of traffic already on 55.
Would there be anything that could be the result of a traffic study that would facilitate?
I
traffic?
can't say, because our traffic engineers, I think it's something that's worth researching, but the individual I spoke to, and I got the email, said VDOT has done all they're doing, it meets our requirements, closed deal. But anything additional, the town would have to do it. I'm just saying with the state codes and with where the building as planned now, those entrance and exits, ingress and egress, is their only option.
And there's no way that these guys would put some kind of time frame on, so these guys could get out and go to work? Could there be anything like that?
Not at this time, I'm sorry. Not this time, sir. This isn't a public hearing. right, we could talk afterwards, but not during this time.
So, I mean, I don't know how many of you guys talked about the signs for pedestrian crosswalk a bit. I mean, that's something that we would be, interested in pursuing, but obviously we'd have to put them in and then give them to the town. I'm not sure what the process is. But we were talking, most of the ones that you have where you push the button, they're solar powered. Doesn't seem like an excessive effort, and it seems like something that would be good with putting the crosswalks anyway. But again,
that would be wonderful.
We could talk through that, as
We could have a remote control and control.
Yeah,
Well, that's a big concern here because we are a walking town.
Yeah.
And I walk my grandbabies, and it's bad enough for me at my age getting across it, not getting ran over, but when I have my grandbabies, so that is a major concern from my perspective. But I think that's something, I don't know if our town manager, if that's something that you all can take a look and see what the legalities is for that. Can that happen?
That would be
With a push, with a crosswalk, maybe? I don't know.
I'm not going to speak for VDOT engineers for sure, but the pedestrian crosswalk is one that has to be studied carefully, and the warrants have to be there to allow for that crosswalk. I think we talked earlier about mid-block crosswalks and the problems with those as opposed to crosswalks for pedestrians at intersections. And of course, VDOT prefers crosswalks at intersections rather
So
than
QB
mid-block.
and Green Hill and 55 would be,
The issue is really, once the crosswalk is in place, stopping traffic to allow the pedestrians to cross. And that's a little bit of a traffic control issue. It's a little bit of enforcement. It's also signage that's needed there to remind people that they're supposed to do that.
they have one right around the corner at Harris Teeter going across to one of the townhomes.
Yeah, I
that are
think
in there.
that
And
the
it
key there is.
Works really well.
It does. The
Yeah.
key is 55 is a primary road.
Right. yeah.
Two-digit numbers, 55, they're primary roads. You don't see a lot of crosswalks, protected crosswalks on primary roads.
Mr. Guyerson, you said a study would have to be conducted. Is that a TIA? Is that what you mean, in order to warrant that?
It would be, it would really look at the location of the crosswalks and the type of, I'll say, mechanics necessary to stop traffic to allow pedestrians to cross over. So whether it's a push button, whether it's a sign, or whether it's more local enforcement, it's probably a combination of those. But I can't tell you specifically whether any of the areas that would be proposed for a crosswalk would meet those standards to allow, for example, a push button to let somebody push the button so the traffic stops while they cross over. It certainly would seem like it with the volumes. And it would
If they on a
certainly-
Saturday, if they counted.
It would certainly seem like an alternative to the little plastic signs that they put out in the middle
Yeah,
of the
that
road.
get run over.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but is that something that is required as part of the site plan, or is that something that the town needs to look at? And while you're looking at maybe just this site specifically, it's really going to be more of a town-wide discussion of a lot of other areas along 55.
So do you think it'd be worth a study to do that?
So I'm a relatively new guy here, and everybody tells me it's a walkable community.
I know, and you have to run across the street.
To get across the street's important if you have a walkable community. So my answer to that is there does need to be some planning done to make it a really great walkable community as opposed to maybe a good walkable community. So
All right.
yeah, the planning work needs to be done to get those crosswalks into place where people can actually utilize them.
We just have we enjoy walking across that street just to get ice cream cone. You do take your life in your hands crossing that street, walking. I don't have to drive it, thank heavens, but
Hopefully we'll be walking across to get dinner now.
We hope.
Just on this ITE, it would be akin to, based upon your square footage and your usage, of how many parking spaces you would need. So it really wouldn't do any good to study it, because there's already formulas and tables that
That are fixed.
that you're required, regardless even necessarily, correct me if I'm wrong, of whatever that study came back, there's still national standards that you would have to build to. And, you know, I live in that community as well. I was the 7th house in there. And I was talking to my wife today, and I actually talked to a couple of my kids. And I was there when it was a fully functioning school with faculty members. Now, granted, it was elementary school, and they don't drive, but there were a lot of cars there. There's a lot of baseball, lacrosse, you name it, came out the other night. They were parallel parked along Blight. The parking lot was packed. It was cool to see all the kids out running around. And, you know, there was a comment made the other day where I was misquoted. But anyway, you know, I leave in the morning because I'm a public school teacher. I come home. My wife teaches. Like I said, we've lived there since '04, and the 7th home in there. And the longest I've ever waited to get out of there from somebody in my community to get out is 2 cars in front of me since '04. And I dare say that some of these other communities, Green Hill Crossing, I think what we need to be careful of is our personal feelings getting in the way of what the law is and what the standards are. And walking town, I mean, I've almost been whacked several times, but these folks aren't going to fix the walking across 55, nor is it necessarily their responsibility. That's the town and VDOT. So this rationale that's going to cause undue hardship, suppose it doubles. Now I have to wait sometimes for 4 cars in front of me. Well, Fayette Street, I've seen many times where there's 5 and 6 cars. So I hear the traffic. I'm sympathetic because I am one of the community. But I think in some respects it's a little bit of hysteria being overblown, being a resident of the community. So I think we need to center on what the law is, because we all have various feelings. But we need to look at what the law is and what they can do. And it's my understanding they have a right to exit onto Blight per the 2015, or 15 or 13, when it was rezoned B1, correct?
So they have access on basically 2 public roads, and they have the right to access those roads.
So really, they have a legal right to access that road, yes or no?
So I'm not your town attorney.
Right.
I'm your town planner.
I understand. I know I'm putting you on the spot.
But they do have the right to access those roads, both Blight and Washington Street. And I've told probably a dozen people in the last couple days that the time to restrict that type of activity would have been during a rezoning application if they wanted to put a condition on the zoning to restrict driveways to a certain location. And of course, with something like that, when you begin to do that as a condition on a zoning application, you need to keep in mind all the regulations that drove them to the decision that they're at today of where driveways can be located. So it wasn't let's just drop it here. There was quite a bit of thought put into it. So, yes, they can access Blight Drive.
So they have a by right to access
That's a
Blight
good way to
Drive.
put it, yeah.
By right.
That's right. It's
Regardless of our feelings, they have a by right as a landowner.
It's a public road, they have the right to access it.
VDOT confirmed that with their study.
I just want to add, I've brought grandchildren and played in your yards. We bought ice cream for our grandchildren. I see you as somebody who really plays well with the town, as it were. There's a problem here. And I'm hoping that maybe your collective minds can come up with some solution so that the Blight Drive people will feel that their voices are heard. I don't have it. I have limited imagination, but I do. It is the elephant in the room. There is a problem here, and you've been a great landowner, and you've reached out to the town, Mr. Landry, so I'm hoping you could reach out again and maybe listen to them and come up with some solution.
And I'll just say, as we walk through the design, we walk through it again multiple times today. I mean, we are pretty limited on where that has to exit. One thing I mentioned to Steve a few days ago, and this is something the town needs to consider, a significant amount of traffic from that property is generated by the ball fields. If traffic is really that much of a concern, maybe the town doesn't want them to be ball fields. We can maintain it as green space. We can make it a walking park. You can put benches, you can put trees, you can do all sorts of stuff. That's not a decision we can make. We have a lease with the county, but if the town wants to have that conversation, then again, it can maintain green space. That's what we wanted to do, is to maintain additional green space. It's a nice balance of being able to put commercial as well as maintain historic green space. Again, to us, whether it's ball fields or it's a park, I think is perfectly fine. And again, a lot of traffic is generated by those ball fields.
I think that would
we're gonna have more
affect,
impact.
that decision would affect a lot more people than the residents that live down there. I don't see that as an option.
I would also like to throw out that in this engineering process, as an engineer myself, I have found that every single table and every single piece of design and engineering work that's done is done significantly over capacity. And I say that about the power that was designed. I say that about the water pipe when we look at the water usage. When I look at peeling back, and what we're looking at is an efficient design. Some of these tables I can't impact. When we're going back and looking at our electric, for instance, when we did an electric design, the engineers come and they have to use international code, right? And the table's in that code. And when I walk the site with Dominion Valley, and they say, really, you need as much, or Dominion Power, you need as much power as the hospital across the street. No, I don't even need a fraction of that, because what we've done in that building is reduce the power usage by the schools by so much. And today we purchase all green power from the grid because it's so, and we pay less per square foot than you do in your house. The plumbing's the same thing. We go through and we've unwrapped all of this. This is not something we can do. Think about what some of the numbers they threw out is the average home, 9 trips a day. Do you leave and come back to your house 9 times a day? I mean, those are the numbers I don't expect to see. You look at, right, our traffic today, right? The building is basically a third built. Do you see this type, hundreds of cars leaving and coming every day? You don't. But based on the internet, the ITE, and all these tables, you have to design and consider that that might be what it is, right? I mean, that's what I can offer. I don't know. I can't predict. I just know that we've put a ton of effort into this design. We're trying to do the best thing for this community and build a site plan, and we're trying to get this approved. We've gone through every agency. We've gone through every department and met everybody's requirements. I don't know how to skin this. I don't know how to skin the cat any differently. But I do know there's no way we're going to, I just can't see that many people coming and going. I just don't. I look at some of the potential buyers, right? We're looking at some buyers that are over 7,000 square feet. They're going to have 30 people. They're not building mass volume of cube space because that's really not, this area out here. You're looking at some firms that want more contemporary space and more. We're just not seeing the density. When I look at the occupancy code, right, I'm looking at these guys and being like, there's no way I can fit 200 people in that spot. But that's what the code allows for. We're looking at 200 versus 70 or 30, right? That's the kind of, and then, of course, that impacts the HVAC, which impacts the power, which impacts all of these other things. If we're designing to these massive standards, that's what we have to do because that's the law. But the reality, what we've seen, I mean, you see the traffic. Do you see a third of what that plan says coming and going from that? You don't. Because it's a table. It's a table in some international average based on some U.S., all across the United States. We're not a metropolitan, but you got to average all of these high metropolitan business usage, retail usage, all of that. That's what that table serves as. At the end of the day, we've tried to comply with everybody. I don't know how to skin this cat any differently. We've put in front of you the best plan that we know how to put. We've worked with everybody. We've negotiated. We started with the town in November of working on this plan and going through, and we've worked with VDOT and DEQ and all of these agencies, and we feel that we've tried to go above and beyond. We've worked with the ARB to come up with a design that really articulates the character of that building and save it, right? Which we're delightful that, there's been a lot of positive response. I don't know how else to solve this problem. All I know is that we want to go build a building and save that structure. I just don't know what else, what else to tell you.
And to sum it up, again, we have to have two egresses. There's only really two places we can put them on site. VDOT's not going to do a stoplight on 55, and we're not going to get stop signs on 55. Again, if we can work out a way in the future of putting the crossing signals down, but I agree, I think the town has to address whether or not they want to put in the push-button crosswalks down the whole route of 55. And this is one thing I've mentioned before. I personally think the town needs to take a look at the overall traffic flow of the entire location. That's not up to any particular commercial property, because we have our small microcosm we're talking about here, but look at the rezoning. You're putting commercial all the way down 55, and unless you want every single individual commercial property to go through a traffic plan and do an analysis, it just doesn't really make sense, because you're going to have exactly this. We are limited to this capability. But if the town had a plan on how they were going to address it, whether it's rumble strips or whether it's the flashing pedestrian, whatever that plan happens to be, I think that needs to be a town plan. Because otherwise you're going to do it piecemeal, and you're not going to end up with a solution that probably works. And I do think you're going to be extremely limited from a VDOT perspective on what they're going to allow you to do. But again, the town can have that fight with VDOT much more than any particular commercial owner.
And we like to help where we can.
How about if we made the main entrance off 55 really pretty, so people were drawn to it?
Amen.
I'll just state again that under the current design, there are no other options for ingress, egress. There's just not, from the VDOT perspective. And I just don't see VDOT approving, crosswalks can only be certain locations. They can only be so close to intersections. If they're close to the intersection, people are expected to come down the intersection and cross at the crosswalks. 55 being a primary, I just don't see, as much as a couple of the areas that kind of be kind of neat, but I just don't see VDOT. They're not going to approve, I don't believe, controlled crosswalks on a primary road such as 55. So, it goes back to, we all share the same concern up here, and especially Mr. Chairman there, because you live there. But, again, the bottom line is there's no other entry-exit plan that I don't think that can work, given the present setup.
I actually like Mrs. Passanelli's idea about the entrance on 55 being, looking like the primary exit, looking like the Blight one would be almost, maybe you need 3 lanes there. Maybe you need a very wide, very inviting, like, come on in, or come on out, or 4 lanes, whatever it takes. I'm just throwing that out, because psychologically, you convince people this is it. And I just want to add one thing, Mr. Landry. I have no idea how many people you'd be renting to, so when I'm looking at this, I'm going by the numbers that you're generating in my head. I'm thinking, oh, this is a nightmare, because it is very difficult to cross 55 right now, and we like to go to Cookies and Cream.
Shows.
Yes, unfortunately. But I think Mrs. Passanelli's idea is somehow to make the Blight one look like
The primary.
a bad stepsister, so that people don't like to go there, and make the main one be the attractive one
Well,
would be.
I agree with that, and I think before long, I'll probably be in front of you looking for some type of sign monument that will attract everybody to that entrance. We are planning to have the benches and the lights and the brick sidewalk and everything that the town loves and what shows our presence. That's part of our design, is to bring that up there.
One of the people, and I'm sorry, it's fatigue that's keeps me from remembering which one said this, but they were concerned about lighting cars leaving and the lights at night and so on and so forth. Would shrubs and trees, a landscape architect, as well as, well, whatever could be done, a fountain, something to break up that lighting so that the Shelbys aren't necessarily seeing cars coming at them, although your house is on the corner rather than somebody in the middle in a house that hasn't been built yet.
I think there's a lot of interesting things that we, as a community, can look at doing. We are absolutely willing to work on, helping that builder to that house that's not built yet, that will be right across the street, and put some type of shading, because those lights, basically that shading is going to be on somebody else's property across the street, right? Because we can't, it's a catch-22, so we would have to help them shade that front. Hopefully they'd put the opposite by a garage or something that is not directly into the
Yes, you're right.
But I think
So-
there's other things that we talked about. We've been brainstorming most of the afternoon. We understand some of the challenges about the cars stacking in front of people's driveways. Towns have gone and marked the street, right? Do not block. You go into the towns, into the cities, and the whole intersection, do not block the box, right? Stops, right? Those in front of their houses, or you could put a nice, sign, please do not block driveway. And then give maybe the police some teeth that they can go and basically, you drive. If you're parked and if you're waiting to turn, it's a courtesy thing. Why aren't people letting people pull into their driveways beyond me? Because you typically pause if you see somebody trying to turn, right? But I think there's things that can be done as a community. None of those are expensive ideas, right? But we've been brainstorming of how we can help that community, especially that corner, because whether we have a by right, I get it, there was a design that put through that the town accepted to have a driveway that close to a corner. I wasn't part of that. I can't solve that problem because it's not my wheelhouse. It's not something I can do. We can brainstorm, we can help, but again, I have control over that plan, and that's all we've been able to do is put forward the best plan that we can see fit to solve the problems.
If you want to talk to a homeowner about that exact issue, go over on Fayette and go down at the very end of Fayette, and my neighbors there coming down Fayette, the lights, they have their garage, their front door, they keep their blinds pulled. The good thing is you can see their big screen TV up on the wall. My question to them was exactly that. Doesn't that drive you up a wall? Their comment was, you get used to it, it's not a big deal. But that's them. That's directly down at the end of Fayette. You can drive down and you can see it. So,
Well, I know on Walnut Park Lane, and again, I'm part of that community. So I know some of my fellow neighbors may not think I'm sympathetic. I am, because I'm going to be going in and out with them. I know along Dogwood Park Lane, and if you go, I'm a real estate agent. I show a lot of homes. You'd be shocked how many homes are built at a T, and the builder really didn't care about elevation and where they position the homes, because they design the streets before they parse out the lots. So I think anything you can do to help those folks. I guess I keep coming back to, we have laws, we all have our various feelings, and I respect feelings, but we need to operate by what the law and the regulations say. If not, we're going to be talking about this forever. So are there any other questions for these gentlemen before our town planner gets up? And we can always, if you don't mind, if you could stick around, we could always bring you back, because there may be more questions generated.
Just one more. I believe one of the speakers is Alexander's Keep. Is there going to be some sort of screening for light between Alexander's Keep?
Is that the townhomes in the back?
Yes, that's the town hall.
So we have a buffer.
Yes.
We've done some neat things on that back side. So we have a significant buffer on the back. We have this on the plan where we will continue to put trees. We've been adding trees as we've lost trees and stuff. So we've been doing this because we're a good citizen. We should be doing that. We have a runoff bioretention filter in the back, which is trying to promote some of the green type of systems where we can send that water down. That will add an extra 10 feet within for our buffer zone. So we're going to have a nice landscaping plan, which is in the site plan on the back, along with our bioretention filter and what was that other, the broth thing? An infiltration trench that we will have that will collect the water and drain slowly down through the community. So we're trying to do some creative things that we've put in our plan to really help water. Everybody has water problems when we get this type of rain. Also a nice landscaping plan. We're continuing the lighting plan, so our plan shows that we're using the same Acorn Washington Street lamps all through the property. We're going to try to use globes that will concentrate that light down and not pollute up. I know that you bring up Alexander's Keep. I think that they probably have more of a light problem. As people drive down the side of the building, the lights are up high enough, lights the entire village. And we're aware of that, and we're looking at how we can promote the cure of those situations.
Thank you.
All right, if you all don't mind sticking around, because I'm sure there could be more questions generated.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Sir, you want to go ahead and give us the town planner?
And, the presentation and the discussion, just as a new guy here with the Planning Commission, this is a great discussion. In the presentation, I think answered most of the questions. A lot of really good points were brought out. But the chairman really had hit the nail on the head, and I want to try to stick with the requirements and talk to you about that a little bit. So if you think of your planning department, so to speak, as a big funnel, we get things like this that are pretty big, and comments from VDOT and comments from all the other agencies. Those are all funneling down to one point, which is right here. And then we try to get that information out to you, sometimes timely, sometimes not in time. But, and there's a lot of information and discussion with applicants at the last minute because of the concerns that are brought up. But I've tried to summarize this for you and get it down to a point where I think it's the best summary I could come up with the information I had. And just bear with me a little bit, because there are a lot of rules and regulations that we follow, specifically in the zoning ordinance, and now a rather new zoning ordinance, to guide us through this process. The site plan is an administrative process. It's not legislative, which means this applicant needs to meet certain standards. And we saw that with the discussion with VDOT and the letter that we got back from VDOT. So the major question to ask is, have the applicants, has the applicant QBE met the standards? And my response to that is yes, they have. They've met the standards. So the plan, as you all know, has been before the Planning Commission a couple of times. You've looked at it. There hasn't been any significant changes to the plan, and you've heard from the applicant tonight why that plan, why they came up with the plan that they have. They've looked at all the rules and regulations and the standards that each of the agencies have to come up with that plan. Another major item is the plan review. The reviews have taken on quite a bit of time. And at the last Planning Commission meeting, when we looked at the plan, I knew most of the outside agencies had reviewed the plan and had come back with I'll say positive reviews. The big issue was, has the applicant responded to all those comments? And they have. They've responded to all those comments. Earlier today, I went through the plan with the town engineer to make sure that any of those comments that have been made have been addressed, and they have. We talked about the traffic study and the implications of the study, and I don't think I really need to go into that anymore. The bottom line, as you get to know me a little bit better, I try to get to the bottom line as quickly as possible, but there are no additional studies required by the zoning ordinance, by the standards that we follow for the applicant to go through. The town's expert is VDOT. They have the roads, they take care of the roads, and the town relies on VDOT to review the plans to make sure that they do make the standards. I'm confident that the reviewer for VDOT would have highlighted something that needed to be done. I have no doubt in my mind, if there was an additional use or an additional number that he wanted, or some other information, that they would have asked for it. And but we did get a response from VDOT, and we've heard about it tonight. One of the things that the chairman brought up was that we have to follow the zoning ordinance. One of the hardest things for me was that we have a new zoning ordinance. And that new zoning ordinance went into effect Monday night. So 2 months ago, that draft ordinance was in front of me, and I ended up talking to the applicants, and they were looking at that draft zoning ordinance, trying to make sure that they had met both the existing zoning ordinance and what was proposed, because none of us knew whether or not the zoning ordinance would be adopted Monday night. So they were having to really look at a draft in design and what was in place. And it was a little bit confusing, quite confusing for me. And trying to get to the bottom line, as I usually do, I said, you have to design it to the existing ordinance. And they did. And then I said, you have to review the draft ordinance that's up for adoption and make sure that it adheres to that. So the site plan was prepared under the zoning ordinance, the old ordinance, and then in anticipation of the new ordinance, which was adopted Monday night, we've designed to that standard, and the staff reviewed it. In talking with the town engineer today, the site planning requirements really have had a minimal change from one version to the other as far as the site planning requirements. There are other changes in the zoning ordinance, but those have been really minimal, so it was a little easier than we thought. So the site plan itself is designed within the standards of the zoning ordinance that was adopted June 5th, 2 days ago. The process with the new ordinance, the ordinance that we're operating under tonight, has changed a little bit from the old ordinance, the one that we were working with. And one of those major changes is it recognizes that site plans are an administrative function, not a legislative function. And that's it's a big deal. It's important for you to understand that. So the town council no longer reviews site plans. I'm sure if somebody asked to look at one, the town manager and I would bring it to the town council so they could take a look at it. But basically, the ordinance allows for review by the planning commission. It doesn't go to the town council any longer. With minor modifications or minor site plans reviewed by the administrator, which is the zoning administrator. So there have been some significant changes with the adoption of the new ordinance. One of those significant changes was the height requirement. And because of that change, we could move forward with the final site plan tonight. And the new ordinance allows for preliminary and final site plans to move along together, because quite honestly, once you get through a preliminary plan, the final is really the comments, any review comments, updated on the same plan. If they're very minor, and most of these recently have been, you're going through the same thing over and over again. So I've updated, I know the chairman was concerned about the schedule, and I try always to meet with the applicants and talk to them about timing and scheduling, because it's important. It's important for the town and for the applicants. And this is a deviation from the original schedule we had, and it's because we have the capability to review this as a final. We also don't have to go to the town council, so it cuts time off of it. And is that a good thing or a bad thing? I guess it depends on your perspective. Some people like to delay things, but in most cases, getting through them in a reasonable period of time is a positive thing. So the final site plan with the Planning Commission in internal administrative procedures, with bonding and final site sign-off of the site plan, can happen with the Planning Commission review tonight. Usually there's the site plan that you see. After that, one of the next steps is the staff sits down with it make sure that site plan has met all of the comments. Then, once, if there are any minor changes that need to be done, we'll get the plan back from the design engineer, and then ask for the bonding documents that estimate the construction cost. We sit down and review that with the design engineer to make sure it meets some minimum standards for costs. And then after that, we talk to each one of the review agencies to make sure they're willing to sign off on it. And then at that point, we're just about ready to sign off on it. And so I just want to point out to the Planning Commission that tonight really isn't the final say. We don't sign the site plan tonight. It still goes through quite a bit of internal reviews to make sure it meets all the standards. The bottom line is, if we forgot something tonight, it's in the zoning ordinance. It needs to be placed in there. So my recommendation to the Planning Commission is that you approve the site plan as a final this evening. I do have a couple notes on it. The plan's been before the Planning Commission numerous times. There haven't been any major changes by any outside agencies. The traffic concerns, and I understand those concerns, and have met with some of the neighborhood members. And as a matter of fact, in the information that you got this evening, there were 2 letters from neighbors about their concerns, and I wanted to make sure you got those. And we'll make sure they're part of the record. But all the comments that we've gotten from the external agencies, including our town engineer, have been incorporated into the plan. So I do have a suggestion for a motion, and it's placed before you. I'll be happy to answer any questions. The applicants, I think, has done a good presentation and answered all my questions, especially on the traffic situation, which was highlighted tonight by the concerns the citizens were here.
I have an issue with the communication, because in the packet tonight, it has July as the final site plan with Planning Commission. So as a way of communicating with the public, if we do it tonight, I think it's disingenuous with what this packet says. I have a problem with saying in a packet, we're going to do it 1 month and then do it a month early.
So the purpose of outlining that is it's not a firm schedule by any means. And if you'll note, it's a tentative schedule.
Yes.
And usually it's a lot longer, but it isn't just an idea. It's an idea to give everybody where we are. It's not a firm public hearing date or anything of that sort. It helps guide me. It helps guide the rest of the staff.
But it also helped guide the public. The public
That's
reads
correct.
this.
And they should read it as a tentative schedule, not as a schedule that's fixed or a date that you'll actually vote on.
It seems to me, Steve, that we had a public hearing scheduled for March 1st for this. And then that was the night on which the plan was withdrawn.
So let me talk to you about public hearing. This is not a public hearing item. It's an administrative function outlined in the zoning ordinance. And I've told you earlier that one of the changes to bring the town code up to today's standards was to take that section out of the old zoning ordinance and change for the zoning ordinance that we're operating today. There's no public hearing process. It doesn't, the plan does not go to the town council. It's reviewed by the planning commission.
So we didn't need a public hearing on this at all legally?
2 months ago?
Or
Yes.
no,
Yes.
in the
2
process?
months ago, yes.
Yes.
Now, you do not. It was in the town zoning ordinance. Some communities may, in older ordinance, ignore that, but Haymarket chose to stay steadfast, so to speak, and follow the ordinance to a T. And so back in March, the other ordinance was in effect, and it required a public hearing. Right now, no, it does not.
Is it safe to say, when an applicant comes in and designs a property to develop, they look at our zoning ordinance, and they design to the standards of the written document of the zoning ordinance. And the only two, under a current zoning ordinance, the only two public hearings are for SUPs and zoning, correct?
That's correct.
So other than that, there are no public hearings. Obviously, they can come speak at citizens' time, but the document guides the building based upon the legislative process to get the zoning ordinance into place, which we've done for 2 years, which is a change from what we've been doing because, and one of the reasons we did that is because it just slowed everything to a crawl, where we had public hearing after public hearing for things that most jurisdictions would have had the zoning ordinance in place. They designed to that standard. So is this project totally designed to the zoning ordinance currently on hand that we operate under?
It is, and I wouldn't recommend approval unless it was. But my recommendation is for approval because it meets those standards. And you're absolutely right. The plan is designed to a standard, and it's done that way, just like subdivisions, so that we, both the town and the applicant and the citizens, can predict the outcome. They can look at the ordinance, they can say, this is what the standards are, this is what we can do, or this is what the developer can do and can't do, and it takes it out of that feelings and puts it into a standard that we can all adhere to. It makes it to the point where we can predict the outcome. And we can predict the outcome. It makes it better for everybody. This makes it better for business. It makes it better for citizens because they know what can happen beside them or in their neighborhood and how it has to be designed, rather than leaving it up to the feelings of a particular board or council. Because that outcome's predictable, it makes it for a better community. I really believe that, and I'll stick to my guns on that. Businesses like it, and neighborhoods like it, homeowners associations like it, planning commissions like it, town planners like it, because we have a set of rules to follow, and we can tell people when they come in, this is what you have to do. In this case, they've done it. They've followed 2 sets of rules, and were patient enough to wait for the standard to change. Not for them, but for the town itself. And when the ordinance was adopted on Monday night, then we moved forward to bring it to the Planning Commission tonight. So,
in effect, though, you've basically put the Planning Commission out of business. Because you just said, we've met the criteria, they have met the criteria, so therefore you have no legal right to say no.
Is that a question or a statement?
That's a
Because
statement.
I think.
That's a
I
statement,
think
based
that
on
this-
what you just said.
I think the discussion that you had tonight was very good. And I think that once you get away from reviewing plans, you can spend time planning, which is the most important thing you can do for Haymarket. You need to step back and begin planning. Do the studies that you're talking about. Get your hands dirty doing some planning work rather than reviewing plans at a very detailed level. And that's my personal opinion. I just threw that in not to argue with you, but I think
That may be a philosophical discussion for another evening. It's after 9 o'clock now.
So really our job, one of our main responsibilities to the citizens in the town is to ensure that what's in our zoning ordinance is being adhered to by the town staff and the applicants as they move forward.
That's it.
So if the town, if the people planning their project follow the rules, and then you as the town planner and all the folks internally, the engineer, follow the rules of the written document, when it comes up to us, then we do our due diligence to ask the proper questions to make sure it's following our zoning ordinance, and if it is, then they've met the requirement to move forward, correct?
That's correct.
Which is totally different than what this commission is accustomed to, because we've had to look at plans, and I'll speak for myself. I mean, I have a real estate background, but I'm not an engineer. So really, in the past, in some respects, it was unfair to the planning commissions because we were dealing with things we had no business dealing with. And in essence, we were hurting the town, this is my opinion, because we weren't planning. And that's probably one reason where we have residents still wondering what their property is, when that should be our 30,000-foot view, not where a driveway is going.
I think you've said it. I can't add anything to it. I think you've said it quite well.
But again, it is a different standard of which we're accustomed to.
And basically, tonight, what we've done really is just satisfy any requirements that are brought up, our questions, or any issues that we have. We bring them up as a commission, but the decision's already been made. Or do we vote on this?
Well, I don't see the need to vote on it if they've met everything.
It's already, yeah.
That's, I mean, I'm not sure what our role is, so why would we vote?
Your role is to approve.
You've
the site
already
plan.
said that it's all right, so
But
why do you need us?
I'm just a part-time town employee.
So are we.
Filtering all
Very
this,
part-time.
filtering all this to the commission. The authority is in the commission's hands.
It
as
still
a group.
requires a motion and a vote.
That's correct.
Okay.
And I do. I think it would be, I mean, you're the town manager. I think it's good that we're going through, obviously it's good we're going through this, but what would your comments be to this? Because you have a lot of experience. Not that Steve does, I'm not implying that by any stretch, but you're the town manager, so could you speak to this? I know it's getting late, but I think it's worth hearing your perspective.
Thank you, Chairman. I think Steve did an excellent job summarizing the application process, also explaining the zoning ordinance as it is today and staff's role in helping you execute the zoning ordinance. I understand, as we met with the other chairs, to try to communicate with you the process that we want to help you do your jobs better and more efficiently and be a town that has full-time professional staff to help you so that when you do review these applications, you can ask some clarifying questions. You might get a recommendation from staff to one way or another, or ask additional questions, as I just said, to help you make the decision. You are the body that approves these site plans, and like Steve also said, the only reason you have a public hearing is for things like special uses or variances, where there are special circumstances or variations from the ordinance in which you need to hear additional information from the public. The great thing about having the public come and share throughout these processes is to give you additional information for when you do revise the comp plan and you do revise the zoning ordinance, so that you can continue to mold it in the direction of the vision that the community wants to go in, if that makes sense. So we want to work with you to continue to help you understand the new ordinance, understand the planning commissioner's role in that, and continue to move these applications through in a more predictable way. Just like Steve said, developers come in here and the first thing they do is they look in the zoning ordinance and they expect that if they follow what it says, they will get approval. That's the predictability of the process. And if we find that it doesn't meet what we want in the community, then that's when we revise the zoning ordinance and staff works with the planning commission. That's kind of how the process works. So we're happy to continue to help work with you and as the commission evolves. So I think it was a good meeting and a good process tonight. And I was chomping at the bit to comment about the sidewalks. I just have to add, in my past, I spent 5 years working for a state transportation agency, and it was drilled into my head by every engineer that pedestrians are not traffic calming devices. They are not. And throwing in a sidewalk does not slow down cars. It just puts pedestrians in harm's way. So I think Steve had a great idea. When we get some full-time staff, we've got this whole list of projects that we want to work with the Planning Commission. And it does include that. What are additional ways we can make the town more walkable, including slowing down traffic? And I will tell you, when they build 60,000 square feet on top of this building, people are going to slow down to look at it.
All right. I think the best thing to do is just go around the dais to see if the commissioner has any questions of the applicant or the town manager or it's getting late and I'm getting old, town planner. Yeah, sorry about that. So we'll start over here.
As I said before, we want to move forward. Let's hear about the public, their concern, traffic study, and if planner said everything they made their criteria, I'm okay with that. I have no other comments.
Okay.
I think my questions have been satisfied. I hope you do make the entrance very pretty. Thank you.
And I want to thank the public. I know I've sat where the public sits. I am the public. And you are being heard. And I want to thank the commissioner. I think the last 2 years we put a ton of time and effort into our zoning amendment that was passed, our zoning ordinance, I should say. And I'm sure in the future we'll be reviewing that document as well. I appreciate the applicants. I think you've gone above and beyond what most people would do. I've seen enough projects in this town that, in a lot of respects, you all are different the way you've approached it, because I think you see yourself as part of the community, not just building in the community, which I think is a big difference. I would like to see that the people, especially along Blight Drive, working with lighting and noise, we do have ordinances to mitigate those things. So I think anything that you can do to help those folks that live in those 6 or 7 homes that are being built will go a long ways, because I do sympathize with them. But I think it's important that we as a commission understand our role, and it's definitely changed. I think we're stewards of the ordinance to make sure it's followed. And if it meets the criteria, then it shouldn't be a big deliberative process. So, and I appreciate the task. I know you've put a ton of time. There's no perfect scenario. And I appreciate the comments of the commission. I think they're all valid. And I really like the idea. I thought of all the ideas I heard tonight, this young lady to my left had one of the best. Make it as pretty as possible. Because I think as a resident, most people are going to access the 55. I don't think most people are going to turn. And so those are my comments. Mrs. Carroll?
I'm listening to everything that's said. I very much appreciate the people coming out. We were here on Monday. I appreciate Mr. Landry and group coming out. I know I said before the elephant in the room is this issue of communication, and that's why I mentioned the date, and Mr. Garrison said that this was a tentative thing. That it does say tentative in the papers. I need to support that. I think of law as a basement thing, not as a ceiling thing. I think of laws as the minimum one should meet. Laws talk about, don't kill somebody. But I think that we must be kind to people and we must go out of our way and do more. That's what I mean by the difference between basement and ceiling. So I think that you have met the basement definitely in the ordinance. And this isn't a matter of feelings. This is a matter of just saying what's true in a small town. Haymarket, I think, is a special town. We talk to each other, we communicate, and we work hard. So you've heard the lighting, you've heard the shrubbery, you've heard the concerns about traffic, because all of our citizens have true concerns. So having said that, I feel that we as a panel have a role that we must explore that, and we mustn't be always running and changing zoning after the fact. We do need to have a better vision about the town and to bring more people in so that we're not sort of just catching our tail and doing the minimum. So that's sort of my lesson tonight, is the bigger vision. As Mr. Landry said, that was already zoned, and the fields are already put in certain things. He's limited in certain ways, and those are constraints I was not aware of. But those are constraints that we as a planning commission need to have a bigger vision about. And I think that's all of I thank everybody for their comments, and that's mine.
Mike?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
I'm still kind of amazed by the whole engineering feat of what you're going to do. And I know that there is a challenge here that the people who actually do the building have to face. At least for the next year, that's a school. And I don't know what the total number of kids presently enrolled in that school is, but you're going to be doing some very heavy-duty construction with an awful lot of kids around. And then in the evening, there's baseball teams, and there's scouts, and there's God knows how many other uses that are being put to use. It's great that you're doing all of those things. But the standard of safety for all of those people and kids is something that I'm concerned about. I know that you're not the ones that are going to be wearing the hard hats all the time there 24 hours a day. Well, maybe sometimes you will be. But that is a concern for me, and I felt that concern from the very first night we heard about the project. So, but I wish you well.
Is it Mr. Bain or Bain? I apologize. I just saw this letter for the first time, and I apologize. I'd like to talk to you after the fact. Mr. Joshi that you spoke to, I even have his email that Mr. Landry was included on in here. If I'd have just done my due diligence and seen exactly everything in my packet. I just want to go on the record as saying, Vita, we review plans as given. We don't give alternative solutions to issues. Your concern about white light's being used. You heard tonight the ball fields. I don't think that's an option to remove any of those. That would be the only other way, the possibility of two entrances there, and even then, it may not meet the requirements. Mr. Joshi can't speak to that until he saw the actual plan, so, and afterwards, I'd like to talk to you about that. And I apologize, I didn't get back to you sooner on this. I believe Mr. Landry and his team have done their due diligence. I applaud the fact that they are part of this town, as we are, and I believe they have addressed concerns to the point where they've done everything they could possibly do. So I have no other questions or issues at this time myself. I think they've done what they need to do. I believe, as Steve, our town planner, pointed out, they've met all the requirements. Personal feelings can get involved at times, but again, as you pointed out, Mr. Chairman, it's not about personal feelings, it's about right and wrong and policy, procedures, codes, whatever. I believe they've met them all, so I have no problems with moving forward with it.
All right, thank you. Any last thing you want to say as the town planner or the town manager? All right, there is a recommended motion by the town planner at the bottom of your packet. The motion suggested, so do I have anyone that would like to make the motion?
Is that on the first page here in the middle?
Oh, I'm sorry, it's down here at the bottom of this packet, sorry.
Should I make the motion, I should give the address?
Yes, ma'am, that would be, yes.
Okay. A motion is recommended for the approval of the site plan of 14600 Washington Street, QBE, ZP number 2017-02, as a final document for the staff to the administrative review and final approve and bond. What is that?
Of the site plan,
Of the
right?
site plan, yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you. Do I have a second?
I will second.
All right, any discussion?
Discussed it to death.
There's a lot of wisdom on the right side of the dais, and I appreciate the public school teachers. I'm one of you, so you have 3 teachers up here. Take care of the kids. All right, let's do a roll call vote, please.
Yes. Passanella?
Yes.
Cottle?
Yes.
Carroll?
Which Carol?
Mrs. Carroll?
Yes.
Mr. Carroll?
Yes.
Mr. Shannon?
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Do I have a motion? I'm sorry, we have a town planner update, if there's anything left to update.
Most of my recent activity has been site plan related, both for QBE and for Dogs Day Out. And just to let the Planning Commission know, the town received a package of plans for all the signs at the Sheets facility. So it won't come before the Planning Commission, will probably go before the ARB. So those are the 3 major items that the town has been looking at recently.
Okay, and Sheets is still coming along. I noticed a lot of the building in the back is pretty much almost under roof or is under roof. They've really done is it still on schedule? Because I've had a couple of people ask me about the gas pumps.
I try to avoid it right now, but so I don't know the status of the gas pumps, but talking with the fellow who's responsible for the signs, they are pretty much on schedule, and will be. I can't remember the date exactly that they were trying to shoot for, but they are on schedule.
Okay. Any other?
As the Divergent Diamond is still on schedule, they're saying, I talked to Tina today, still mid to late July to be completed.
With everything, sidewalks and everything.
It's a definite maybe. But yes, ma'am, they're supposed to have everything done. They may have they will definitely have some small minor punch list items. I have no doubt about that for the final walkthrough. I will be part of that as well. But they're on schedule. They're going to have punch list items. They'll probably be working for several more weeks after that, depending on what the items are. But for the most part, signs, lights, everything is supposed to be up operational. Again, they have officially until end of October, but they get through early, they get a bonus. They're going to get through early. So.
All right, any other?
I wanted to say how I appreciate across the street the industrial equipment has been removed. And any word yet on when the blighted buildings will come down?
Not that I know of, no.
Okay, all right. And also,
Nobody's called me about it.
okay, and I just wanted to remind everybody that we're having the health fair on Saturday, and the hours are, I think, 9 to 2, right?
Correct.
Okay.
All right, any other questions for the town planner before I ask for a motion to adjourn?
No, Mr. Chairman, but I do have one other comment that I do want to make, but not on the town planner update.
Okay.
Is that okay? As we know, next month, we appoint our chair and vice chair, as well as our ARB liaison. I will not be able to continue as the ARB liaison, just with some things with time management and with my busy schedule. So I will need to be stepping down as the ARB liaison come next meeting.
Okay. You'll remain with us, though,
On the planning,
as the planning commissioner liaison?
with the town council for right now, yes, sir.
Could somebody be thinking about the ARB? We can visit that next time. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I will make the motion that we adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Absolutely.
Yes. All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed. Thank you so much for coming.